Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Charmer test hand video. So this deck is a really awesome budget deck that actually just came out recently with a structure deck, which makes it ridiculously budget. It's really fun to play around with. It's really kind of a cool base deck that actually plays very similarly to how you used to play with the old school DM rules, which I really like. It's more of a beatdown slash control deck, which is kind of cool. I like the way that it plays, and I've been playing around with it a lot recently, doing a lot of solitaire hands and doing a lot of testing on Yugioh Pro, and it's just a really fun deck. It's overall really cool, and I like the way that they actually retrained the deck to be this really neat kind of element-based deck that can kind of control the board, but also make really big beat sticks. So, without further ado, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below because we have some awesome rewards, you guys, like getting your name description for every single video, getting signed cards in the mail, or even getting a Quest deck profile every single month that you're a patron, along with test hands. So, without further ado, guys, let's get straight on into this. And if you want to check out the deck profile for this, it is down in the description below, so you guys can definitely check out the deck profile for playing around with Charmers as well. This will be like the 4th video I've had on the channel of actually playing with Charmers, because I did a $30 budget build, I did an opening of actually opening the structure decks, I did a full-fledged deck profile, and now you guys are getting test hands. And before we even get into this, guys, I really quickly want to ask you guys, which is your favorite Charmer between the Earth Charmer, the Wind Charmer, the Fire Charmer, and the Water Charmer? Let me get where she is. I bet she's on the top. Yeah. No. Which one is your favorite out of all the Charmers? Mine personally is probably the Fire Charmer. I think probably the Fire Charmer, maybe the Wind Charmer is probably my favorite out of all of them. I think probably the Wind one, because Wind has so much lore behind her and she's in so many other things, and she's actually kind of a part of the Gusto archetype, which is kind of cool, and I love the way that they've tied in the lore with all the other monsters, especially with Era. She's really cool because she's tied in with Giga Gaga Gigo. I know that's really weird, but she's tied in with that. That's actually her familiar, which is pretty cool. So let's go ahead and do some test hands and see what we can actually pull off for this deck, because it's kind of weird the way that it plays. It's a little bit slow, I'll be honest. The deck does, like, my build is not super slow, but like just naturally the way that it plays is kind of weird. It's more control based slow, where you're trying to like get a monster out like Fairy Tale Luna. It's kind of reminds me like Fairy Tale Luna control slow, like where you're playing like Solemn Judgments in the back row, playing copies of the field spell that just give you negations, where you go into the grind game is what I'm trying to explain, is the way that the deck kind of functions, and it works well that way. I mean, it really does work well to be able to go into the grind game with this deck, because it's just a good control based deck. But there is the way that I built this deck. You do have cards like Double or Nothing that you can go into Utopia Double and be able to OTK your opponent extremely easily. So let's go ahead and do some test hands and see what we can pull off. So we're gonna go ahead and drop into a Call by the Grave. Double or Nothing, we were just talking about, you don't want you in the hand though. Fairy Tale Luna, the Grand Spiritual Art field spell, and a copy of Skill Drain. So this is not bad. This is not bad at all. You have a hand trap, you have a search, you have the copy of the Grand Spiritual Art, Chirin, and you had the copy of Skill Drain. So you have not that bad of a hand. The only thing I wish I didn't have with this copy of Double or Nothing, which is the only brick in the entire deck that we actually drew. So let's go ahead and see what we can do. So we're going to go ahead and activate the copy of the Grand Spiritual Art right off the bat. We're going to go ahead and get that card on our side of the field as quickly as possible, just to be able to get you those additional plays, because it has the ability that negates the first monster effect that resolves each turn while you control a spellcaster type monster with 1500 defense, which is, guess what? Fairy Tale Luna. Well, no, Fairy Tale Luna has 1000 defense, so it's all the Charmer monsters. But during your main phase, you can reveal a spellcaster type monster in your hand. If you do, you get to add one monster with the same attribute, both 1500 and 1200 defense, from your deck to your hand. So if you have one of the Charmers in your hand, you can reveal them in your hand to be able to grab from your deck the familiar, and then you put the copy of the Charmer back in the deck, which is pretty cool. So we're going to go ahead and activate that. We're going to go ahead and normal summon out the copy of Fairy Tale Luna. Fairy Tale Luna's effect is going to go off, which is kind of funny because we were actually just talking about that card just a second ago. And it will let you search a copy of one of your Charmer monsters, because you need to get into your Charmer monsters pretty quickly, because you need them for the copy of the Grand the field spell. It's really important to have it for the field spell. So we're going to go ahead and activate. You have the copy of Call by the Grave that you could ditch if your opponent did try and hand trap you at any point where you had the copy of Fairy Tale Luna, and then you have the Skill Drain set as well. So you could set the copy of Skill Drain in the back row, and that's pretty much it. That's what I was talking about, where it grinds out. You can use the Fairy Tale Luna, bounce a card, put it back in your hand, and then you also have the copy of Skill Drain that you can pay 1,000 and then basically lock your opponent down where they can't activate any monster effects. Now, if we go into our next turn and we draw, these effects in our hand do not matter. I'm going to go ahead and tell you they don't matter. We can go ahead and normal summon out the copy of the Earth Charmer monster. If this did not bounce and it was still on our field, you still could go into your other monster. That's the monster in the extra or in the main deck. That is the Familiar level 5. You can tribute these two monsters on your side of the field as long as you get rid of an Earth monster, and you can special summon it to your side of the field, which is right here. You can use this and it would reborn something, but not under Skill Drain. So basically, that's where you just start attacking your opponent with 1850 beat sticks, and hopefully at some point you either draw the Searcher, which is the Spirit Charmers, or you draw out a copy of the Awakening of the Possessed, which is a very important card in the deck as well, because every time you normal summon a monster with 1850, you get to draw a card, which is pretty cool, because you play like 10 normal summons in this deck to be able to do that. So let's go ahead and go into the next test hand. That had a little bit of a brick to it, and what I was talking about where it's a little bit where you're trying to control the board to be able to go into additional plays. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't the most optimal hand that Charmers can put out. Now, this deck is a little bit of a rogue deck. I wouldn't say I would carry it to a locals. I probably would not carry this to a YCS because it just needs more support in order for it to be like that level. And I'm really interested to see what they do with the dark and the light charmers, because that could really push this deck over the edge to make it really good. Especially with them being able to make chaos builds with this deck, if they do that, would be really cool. And I think that's why they haven't done a retrain of those yet, to be able to give us the alternative kind of types for those. I just really feel like they need to, though, because that would be really nice. So let's go ahead, like their familiars. The familiars would be really nice, but they probably end up getting limited because they just special summon themselves out if you control a spellcaster. And then you would get maybe kind of like Wyvern Buster and Collapse Servant all over again, to me. That's just what I think. So let's go ahead and see what we can draw. So we're going to get Awakening of the Possessed, which is good. We got a Charmer, that's really good. Ash Blossom, Possessed Partnership, and we got the Field Spell again. So this is not bad. This is not bad at all. You have a draw, you have a hand trap, you have a negation, you have a little bit of everything you need. So we're going to go ahead and activate the copy of the Awakening of the Possessed. You're going to go ahead and set the Possessed Partnership, and you're going to go ahead and activate the Field Spell, and then normal summon out the copy of the Flame Possessed, or Familiar Possessed, Fire. And what she does is she lets you draw a card, because if you have Awakening the Possessed and a monster you control, every monster gains 300 attack. So this is actually at 2,150, which is kind of weird because every time I have a different attribute on the field, they all go up by 300. And this stacks as well. So if you have multiple copies of this, it does stack on the monsters, which is pretty good. And then it also has the ability that if a Charmer or Familiar Possessed monster you control cannot be destroyed by card effects, and if a spellcaster type monster with 1,850 attack or original attack is normal or special summon, then you get to draw a card. So I would get to draw a card, which is a second copy of Ash Blossom. Not the greatest, but you do have 2 hand traps. So you have a negation here, and you do have in the back row, you have the copy of the Possessed Partnership, which is not going to help you out too much because it special summons a spellcaster type monster with 1,500 attack from your hand or graveyard in attack position. So if your copy of the Familiar Possessed does get destroyed, you can use it in the back row to be able to special summon back the copy of the Flame Possessed, which is going to be super helpful. So you do have the copy of Ash Blossom, so we're going to go ahead and discard the copy of Ash Blossom to be able to stop our opponent for something, and then we're going to go ahead and draw for turn. So we're going to go ahead and draw into a copy of Spirit Charmers. Now this is where it gets pretty interesting. We're going to go ahead and activate the copy of Spirit Charmers, and we're going to send from our hand to the graveyard the copy of Ash Blossom, because you have to discard a card to resolve the copy of Spirit Charmers. Then it lets you take one monster from your deck that's a familiar. It lets you take one of either of the 3. Like, you get to take 2 of the cards. You either get to take a Charmer, a Familiar Possessed, or a Possessed Spell or Trap, and add one of them to your hand, and you set the other to your field. So, for instance, we would add from our deck to our hand a copy of, say, any of the cards that you particularly want. Let's say a copy of the Asta. We're going to go ahead and add her from our deck to our hand, and we're going to go ahead and add the copy of the Awakening of the Possessed, because we already had the other cards set, to be able to stack our attack points up by 1,200, which is going to make us a 3,050 attack point beat sticks on the field. So we're going to go ahead and add this from deck to hand, or no, we're going to set this to the field, and we're going to add this from deck to hand. Now we're going to immediately flip this face up, normal summon her, and you can only use each effect this once per turn, so it doesn't stack the draw effect, but it does stack the attack boost effect. So we're going to go ahead and draw, which is going to be a copy of Ash Blossom. We get our third Ash Blossom, so basically got our Ash Blossom back basically for free because we got a +1, well, kind of a +1 off of this, and then you got the Ash Blossom too, so, I mean, and you have two 3,050 attack point beat sticks, that is just going to help out a lot. Now, if you really want to push this a little bit over the edge to get you a little bit more, you can get rid of both of these monsters on your side of the field, which is going to be helpful, and special summon from your deck a copy of the Awakening of the Possessed Archfiend, which it has the ability that this card can be special summoned from your hand or deck by sending one face-up spellcaster and one face-up level 4 earth monster, which we had on our side of the field. Then, when it's summoned to your side of the field, you can revive back a monster onto your side of the field, which is your copy of this, and then you can immediately activate the copy of the Possessed Partnership, which can bring this back to your side of the field as well. And then you have the effect that you can overlay if you want to overlay, and all of these are gaining 1,200 each because this is gaining 3 for each attribute, which you have 2. So it's 6, and then 6 is 12. So you're gaining an additional 1,200 attack points per monster, which is pretty cool. So this is up to 32, this is up to 3,050, and this is up to 3,050. So you essentially have on board 9,300 damage on board just with these 3 monsters, and you have a negation. So if you want to push a little bit further, you can, and I'm going to show you how. You have the copies of Utopia Double in your extra deck, so you can overlay this. You can go Utopia Double, detach a material. If your opponent leaves you open, you can go Utopia Double, and then if you have 2 level 4s on the field at any time, and then you can immediately grab Double or Nothing, swing at your opponent for the 3,000 or the 5,000. Oh, excuse me. You got to put Utopia on top too. You swing at your opponent, you detach a material from this, and you would get to drop Double or Nothing and hit them for 11,200 because it still applies with the copy of the Awakening of Possessed. So that's pretty cool too. Now, something that you want to keep in mind about this that's kind of neat is also this, when it activates, lets you pop a card on the field, which is kind of cool too, because if you control monsters with 2 or more attributes, you can destroy 1 card on the field as well, and you can banish this card from your graveyard and then target one of your continuous spells or traps as a possessed spell or trap in your graveyard and set it back to your field, which is pretty good. So you have the attack here, and you have the attack here that can hit directly for 32, and then you have the Ash in hand as well, so you have an additional negation. Now, it does turn this off when you go into Utopia Double because you don't have that spellcast trap monster with the original defense of 1,500, but you still have all the other plays, which is still pretty nice. So you had a lot of potential with that one particular hand. Now, the other cool thing is this, that I can't really show you in the test hand because I don't have an opponent to play against. But the cool thing is this, is you can actually link climb with these monsters. So depending on your matchup, if you're playing against a wind-based deck, you can use the wind or the earth against an earth-based deck, or the copy of the Fire Charmer, a Blaze, if you want to go that. It depends on what your matchup is. If you're playing against a particular deck that has a particular attribute, you can go into these and take, like, for instance, the most common one that you guys have probably seen is people going into your copy of the Fire Charmer Ablaze. So if you go into Fire Charmer Ablaze and your opponent has an Ash Blossom in their graveyard, I'm going to show you really quickly how to get into a Link 4 in this deck, really fast. So let's go ahead and say your opponent has an Ash Blossom in their grave. This is their graveyard, okay? And you have a copy of the Fire Charmer on your side of the field, and you have any other monster on your side of the field. It doesn't matter. This is their graveyard, this is your hand. And you have any three spell cards in your graveyard. I'm going to show you how you can go into an immediate Link 3 or Link 4 in this deck off of 1 normal summon, which is kind of crazy in this deck too. So these are in your graveyard. Let's say you've gone into the grind game, you've got 3 cards in your graveyard, and you want to summon out a copy of a Access Code Talker. Let's say you want to go into Access Code Talker, or a Zero Boros if you're trying to play more budget. You go ahead and normal summon the Fire Charmer, you special summon the copy of the Gigabyte, and then you link these 2 together. This could have been any other Link 4. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be any Link 4. Or it can be any Link 4 that you're going for that just requires 2 monsters to summon it, which is kind of cool. And it can be any 2 level 4s on your side of the field, or any 2 monsters, at least 1 fire monster to go into this. So we're going to go ahead and go into Fire Charmer Ablaze, and we're going to take the copy of Ash Blossom out of our opponent's graveyard, because this card enables us to take a card out of our opponent's graveyard because it has the ability. If you guys are not familiar with this card, that it lets you, when it's link summoned, you get to target a fire monster in your opponent's graveyard and special summon it. The reason I'm saying that any of these work this way is because they all say you can take a wind, you can take an earth, or you can take a water. And that's why I play one of each of them to climb like this. So you take this, you go ahead and link these two away immediately. This is very much like Salamangreats do to climb in their link scales. But it works the same exact way, but we play a little differently because we play Celine, the queen of master magicians. So we're going to go ahead and go into Celine. Now you have in your graveyard, you have 3 spell cards, okay? So you have 3 spell cards in the graveyard. I believe they can be face up on the field too, because it has the ability, this card is link summon, you can place 1 spell counter on this card for each spell card on the field or in the graveyard. So they can be face up, so if you have the continuous spells on your side of the field, that's fine too. You go into a copy of Celine, Celine's effect will go off, she will get 3 tokens or 3 spell counters on her, and once you go into Celine, her effects will go off, you remove the 3 spell counters, and then you immediately special summon from your graveyard in defense position the Familiar Possessed, which is a spellcaster type monster, link these 2 away, and summon out a copy of Access Code Talker, and then whatever else you have on the field is going to back up this Access Code Talker, and you have 2 link monsters in your graveyard with 2 different attributes to give it 2 different pops, and it's going to go up by an additional 3,000, being at 53, off the copy of Celine, which is pretty good. Now, you could go into any other link for it. It doesn't have to be Access Code. If you can't afford Access Code, I totally understand. You can go into a copy of Zero Boros. As long as it just requires 2 monsters, you can do this combo. If it requires 3, like Borrelsword or Borreload, you need a 3rd monster on your side of the field to go into that particular combo, because you do have the copy of just the 2 Celine and a Spellcaster on your side of the field. So that's kind of cool. It's just a really cool quick combo for you guys. Let's go ahead and do one more test hand and see what we can pull off, just to see what we can do. But that's one really cool combo that if you have any 3 spells on your field or in your graveyard and you have 2 monsters on your side of the field, you can go into a link 4 really easily in this deck. That's kind of cool. And it's even if it's in your opponent's graveyard too, I believe, because this card says that you play spell counters on it equal to the amount of spells on the field and in the graveyards. So it can be your opponent's graveyard, but I'm just showing you with my graveyard to say I had 3, for example. Okay, if your opponent has 3 face-up spells and you summon Celine, you don't have to have any spells in your graveyard. You just have to have your opponent have 3 face-up spells if you're going into turn 3 or so, where you're actually wanting to summon Access Code Talker and pop stuff against your opponent. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for this next hand. So we're going to go ahead and draw. We're going to draw into the Earth Charmer, Fairy Tale Luna, Spirit Charmers, Possessed Awakening, and a Monster Reborn. Okay, this is pretty good. This is pretty good, I have to say. We're going to go ahead and normal summon the... We're going to go ahead and... No, don't normal summon. Go ahead and activate the copy of Awakening Possessed. That's very important. Go ahead and activate that. Go ahead and activate the copy, or normal summon the copy of the Fairy Tale Luna. Fairy Tale Luna's effect will go off, and you'll get to draw a card. So this will be Chain Link 1. This will be Chain Link 2. Or you can Chain Block, depending on how you want. It depends on how you resolve it. But I usually do it that way, so I get my draw. So we're going to go ahead and add from deck to hand the copy of the Fire Charmer for the reasons I previously showed you guys, because I want to get the Fire Charmer on my side of the field as quickly as possible anyways. Or you can add an odd type that you don't think you're going to draw into, like a copy of the Water or the Wind Charmer, because you don't really play that many Water or Winds in the deck, so you can add those from deck to hand. But if your opponent has like an Ash in graveyard and they try and Ash Blossom you, that's a good way to actually pull it off. So now you get to draw a card. We shuffled the deck. You get to draw a card, which is another copy of Awakening Possessed, which we're going to go ahead and activate that. And then you have the copy of Spirit Charmers in your hand that you can discard a monster from your hand, which can be your copy of the Familiar Possessed Earth. Send that to the graveyard. And now you get to add from your deck to your hand a copy of each of the... you get to add a copy of the Possessed Spell or Traps, and you get to add a copy of the other cards, which I'm going to add the copy of the Possessed Partnership, and I'm going to set... Well, I'll probably add Wind. I'll probably add Wind to my hand, and I'll probably set the copy of Partnership, because then I've set myself up for an additional play next turn. Or you could do it reversal, and you could set this to your field, and you could set this after you activate the copy of the Spirit Possession. Now you have the copy of Monster Reborn, that if you want to resolve the copy of Monster Reborn, you can resolve this, bring it back to your side of the field. And then you have this particular field to go off of, and you have the... monsters gaining an additional 1,200, so they're both at 350, which is pretty cool. I like that a lot. And then you also have the copy of the Possessed Partnership that you can activate and bring this to your field during your opponent's turn. And they have 3 attributes, so they're each gaining 900 off of each one, so it's 18 off of each one of these. And if a monster is, if a spellcaster type monster with an original attack is normal or special summon, you get to draw a card regardless. So I get to draw during my opponent's turn off the copy of Possessed Partnership, and I get to pop a card as well because I have more than one attribute, which is pretty cool. So, now if your opponent passes and they don't destroy this, you can flip it face up, and then you draw for turn, and you draw into a second strike. You can set both of these strikes on your side of the field, and you have 1,200 per monster per Awakening of the Possessed, but when this card is flip face up, I don't believe you do get the draw because it's a flip summon. It's not a normal or a special summon, but if you did get to draw, you would draw on a copy of the Eater, Archfiend Eater, which really wouldn't help you all that much, but it's still there in case you want to go. But if you want to go a little bit further, you can go ahead and get rid of these 2 on your side of the field, go into the copy of, let's see, where is it? There it is. You can summon this, and then it will let you special summon back a monster from your graveyard, which will be the copy of the Familiar Possessed monster, which gets you an additional attack, which it was special summon, and now you would get to draw, which would be the copy of Ash Blossom that you get, so you have an additional negation in your hand. If you want to link climb, you can link climb here. If you want to go in a copy of Utopia Double, you can go to Utopia Double, or if you just want to swing with this board, you can, and you have 2 negations in your back board as well, which is kind of cool. But that's pretty much as far as the deck goes. I mean, it's not that bad. It's pretty much, like I said, it works very well as a beatdown deck, to my estimation. I lean a little bit heavier towards the beatdown with using these to be able to boost up my attack points and be able to draw cards almost like a Supply Squad. It makes me think of Supply Squad a lot. But you had a lot of damage on board. You had, each one of them was gaining 2,400 attack, and just with the copy of your, just with this on the field and the 4 attributes, this is gaining 2,400 attack. I mean, it's getting really big. With that 2,000 beat stick, the Eater card that you had, it's gaining an additional 24, so it's at like 4,400. I mean, that's big. That is big, to be able to get on your side of the field, because they're each getting 1,200 off of each one of those Familiar Possessed on your side of the field, which is pretty cool. So, that's pretty much it for this particular test hand, guys. Definitely tell me what you think of this one down in the comments down below. I will mention you guys this. You don't really touch the extra deck all that much. The most you touch the extra deck is to do that climb, where you do a climb like this, and you climb into your other monsters to be able to climb into a Link 4, like I explained before too. You kind of touch these. These are the big ones that you're going to be going for, is the copy of the Code Talker, the Fire Charmer Blaze, the Celine, and then your Utopia Double play is going to be the main ones. The rest of these I don't super go for all that often, as you guys saw, but it kind of depends on the particular duel, and it kind of depends on the particular play. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can come part of the notification squad, and definitely tell me what you think of this one down in the comments down below, because it's a really fun deck to play around with and very budget, and it's super easy to actually teach somebody this deck because it's very simplistic in what it's trying to do. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there, and we'll see you guys in the next one. See you later, guys.